This is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 6 of the No Parking Podcast. Today's episode is going to be all about how to make the sale and start monetizing your service-based business. And our guest for today's show is Miss Sakita Holley, who is the CEO and founder of the beauty and lifestyle firm House of Success PR. She's also the editor of Hashtags and Stilettos, which is a business lifestyle blog, and hosts a podcast of the same name, which you can find on iTunes and SoundCloud. Sakita I don't even know what to say about today's episode. While we were talking, I was taking notes. I was snapping virtually. I was just so impressed by all the tips she shared on how she built her business, and more importantly, how she started monetizing and making sure that she was valuing her work, valuing herself at the same time, which is what I think a lot of us in this dream driving stage often forget to do. We forget how important the business aspect of pursuing our dreams are. You know, if this is just something that you want to do as a hobby, so be it. But if you want to build a sustainable life around the thing that you love, you're going to have to learn how to monetize and become the best salesperson for your business. So tune into today's episode, and if you're listening on iTunes and SoundCloud, make sure that you subscribe, rate, comment, download, and share with a friend. Let's help spread the No Parking Dreams and Drive community and love to everyone who just wants to learn how they can take their dreams out of park and put them in drive. Hi, Sakita. Welcome to the No Parking Podcast. I'm so happy to have you on today's show.
I'm so happy that you asked me to do this. I've been waiting. Been waiting to get on this podcast. I love what you're doing. I love the concept and the idea, so I'm definitely happy to do this.
Thank you. And it's so funny because you were actually, I remember this in college. I think you were one of the first people I ever reached out to when I was like a senior or a junior or something to ask about careers and stuff. I'll never forget that. Do you remember that?
Of course. And the reason I remember it is because you also did the right thing after that call. Even though we never had a chance to work directly together, you followed up, you stayed in touch, and you implemented a lot of the things that we talked about in your own career. So I love that you're thriving now based on, from that one call, but you've had it all along. I think you just needed maybe to hear that you've got it, you know what you're doing, and you've been killing it.
Thank you, Sakita. That means so much coming from you because I really admire all that you're doing with Hashtags and Stilettos and at House of Success. So thank you once again.
No problem.
So let's get into today's episode. So one of the things I love to ask everyone when they first get on the show is to kind of talk about themselves as a child. I think it's so important to kind of look back. Where did you come from? What were some of the things that inspired you as a young Sakita?
It's so interesting because that's something that I think about a lot myself. And I talk to my grandmother, how did I get here? What was different? And I think for me, one of the biggest influences on my childhood was books. I think that's where my curiosity comes from and this sense of wonder comes from, because for me, books were a gateway into so many different worlds of possibility. My family didn't have the means to travel much. And so when I was younger, because we didn't have that opportunity, books were like a passport into other people's lives, worlds, and experiences. And reading really expanded not only my imagination, but also my idea about what was and is possible for my own life. Reading allowed me to see a life beyond my current circumstances. And in a lot of ways, I was learning, but I was also being empowered at the same time.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's something that I've been hearing a lot of. A lot of the people that we've had on the show have been lifelong learners, and they've been seekers of knowledge. So It's just interesting to see that it's also something that's common with you too.
Yeah.
So let's move fast forward. Let's fast forward to grown-up Sakita after college. Yes. I know you were working at a job. You thought you thought you would love it, right?
But I thought I would.
So what happened and how did you end up making that shift to being an entrepreneur?
I was one of the lucky few to have a degree and get a job in the field that my degree was in. So I was working at a Fortune 50 company doing global communications. And the work, no matter what industry you're in, as long as you have that foundation, you can do it. But I wasn't really interested in the subject matter so much. It wasn't, I was used to my interest was in lifestyle, entertainment, and beauty, and just culture, like things that are on the pulse of what's happening. The work that I was doing was very important, but I just wasn't feeling it in a lot of ways. And I didn't really like the politics of, being in that type of environment. So I just kind of felt like, I need to make a change. And my minor in college at Howard University was entrepreneurship. I've always known that I was going to have a business of some sort. And I started House of Success I think it was probably the summer after my freshman year. I came up with the name. I said, I'm going to have this company one day. So I started freelancing under that name. So I knew it was only a matter of time. But once I was right before the 2-year mark at my job, I was like, you know what? Let me just take this leap of faith. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, I'm going to leap my behind back into another job. And luckily, it worked out.
I've listened to a lot of other podcasts you've done and interviews you've done, and I know you talk a lot about how those early days were not so pretty, and there was a lot of sacrifices that you had to make,
Yes.
and a lot of struggle. How did you keep going in the beginning, when things weren't looking so uphill for you?
Well, I'll talk about some of the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you mentioned, like one of the biggest challenge was a lack of startup capital or financial resources and a lack of credibility that comes with, being so young. And when you have a service-based business and one that's like PR, where you're really selling your thoughts, experiences, and business acumen, that was like a really significant obstacle that I had and in some ways still have to overcome. And one of the ways that I was able to get past that, especially with the credibility, is by having a blog. Before I even launched a business, I talked about PR related topics, and I shared my thoughts on what was happening in the industry to demonstrate my expertise. Mm-hmm. And eventually, I would get a lot of new business inquiries from the blog then and now. So that was one of the ways to overcome that. And obviously, to overcome the financial aspect, you need to have business. So that's how I kind of overcame those things. But it's important that whenever you take a leap of faith like that and you run into these obstacles, the foundation of what you need to have is a belief in yourself. I really believe that I was doing the right thing for me. And I also really believe that I could do it. I knew the work. So it was just a matter of, okay, how can I navigate this to really make it happen and to really sustain, to create a sustainable business.
I like that you said that you really need to have a belief in yourself. And this is something that has been a common theme with the people that we've talked to on the show. They said if you want to be an entrepreneur, you really have to have a certain mindset. And it's not something that can be learned in a way. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that?
I do, because because there's things that are going to happen. Life happens, right? We plan and God laughs. So you have to be steadfast in something. Like, what are you steadfast in? What do you know for sure? Oprah talks about this thing, what I know for sure, lessons that she learned and experiences. And you have to have one of those. And if the only thing you know for sure is that you're the person for the job or that you know what you're doing, then hold on to that. Because, as you go out and pitch yourself and as you go out and try and get business or as you go out and try and kind of overcome these obstacles, there are people or things or events that will happen that will challenge that belief. There are people that are going to say, no, you actually aren't the person for this job. No, you aren't good enough. No, you shouldn't be in this position. But if you know that to be true, then you can kind of move past them and on to the next.
I like that. So let's talk about how you built your business. How did you actually figure out what your service was going to be? Like, what was going to be the thing that you were selling to your clients?
I think it's about, it's something that evolves over time. But when I first started out, the industry, and it was so different. It was 5 years ago, but still, social media was in its infancy, but I knew it would be impactful and important to have those types of services for service offerings for the business because people don't really know how to navigate that, but also just traditional PR services. So media relations, one of the things I had at the beginning is talking about press kits and how to develop that. But now that everything is kind of online, we do that less. We're more of we'll consult on that because most businesses already have that. But it really evolves based on where the industry is going and also based on what client needs are. So after you kind of work in a certain space for, any amount of time, you figure out, okay, this is important or this is what this business needs to, take them to the next level. And you just evolve over time and also based on what you're good at. You never want to offer services that you're not an expert in unless you're going to hire an expert to execute on those services. So it's definitely been an evolution.
And when you were starting out, did you have just one service that you offered and you kind of focused it, or did you kind of have an array of things and your clients were able to pick from it?
I definitely had an array of things. Some of the things that I just mentioned, we also had event marketing, event coordination, and we still have those things. But I think one of the mistakes that I made in the beginning was that, I had this service offering, but I wasn't really educating consumers on what was included in, what do you get for this? Or what, do you need this package or do you need this service? So I think, over time, I've done a better job of that. So yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of talk about your first client. Think back 5 years ago when, I guess you said you started House of Success when you were in college though, right?
Yes, but I'll talk about the first official, like, you need this client to be able to pay your bills. Like,
yes.
I'll talk about those days. And even though it sounds like 5 years is a long time, definitely can't forget. So like I said, although I had been freelancing, I didn't secure my first retainer-based client until after I quit my job because most of, the people or businesses that I were talking to, they want to know that they have your full attention, that you're 100% committed, that your time, is going to be dedicated to them and not this 9 to 5. So I got my first client by cold calling and emailing businesses that I was interested in that I thought needed PR. Luckily now, a lot of inquiries come through, like I said, the blog, but also through referrals, which I'm very blessed and lucky to have. But those initial clients came from me saying, hey, love what you're doing. Here's how you can do it better. Let's work together.
Okay, so was there anything that you learned? Was there a big lesson learned from that first client of yours?
Big lessons learned. There were a lot. That first year in business was very interesting. And again, one of the biggest things I learned is going back to client education. Clients know they need something, but they still, especially if it's not a tangible product. If I'm not making something with my hands and that I'm giving to you at the end of the project, you really need to explain to them what they're getting, the value of the work that you're doing. How is this impacting sales? How is this moving the needle, helping them reach their business goals? So I learned that client education is key because there were a lot of conversations around those first clients not really understanding the value of what they were getting. Now, luckily, they see it, in hindsight, they're like, oh, okay, we get it now. But, while you're in that situation, you need to do a better job of just figuring out where the client is in terms of what they know or what they understand, and then getting them, closing that gap. So client education is key. And that's still something that matters, especially in, PR, marketing, even digital type fields. People know that they need something, but they can't really make the connection of how, it's changing or impacting their business.
And that's just a big part of like personal branding and personal marketing too, because I know, let's say a lot of our dream drivers, they might be bloggers, they might be designers, stylists, photographers. They may think that they're selling a product in some ways, but
Right.
a lot of times you have to then show the value of whatever it is that you're selling. So I like that you kind of talk about that client education, because a lot of them, they may just show the end result, but they may
Right.
not show, how this affects the other person's or the client's bottom line, which is
Right.
what they're hiring them for at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's kind of talk about the biggest mistakes that you think a lot of creative entrepreneurs make when it comes to building their clientele.
That's a great question. I think the one of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to be all things to all people. Like, it's important to decide early on what your niche is or your specialty or what your specialty will be so that you can develop category depth and become best in class in that area or few areas. Yes, I know in the beginning that it may just be all about securing as many clients or as much business as possible, but things will be and get a lot easier for you once you're able to make a clear decision about who you're trying to reach, because then you can focus all of your resources and all of your time on, being the best in class in that area.
That's something I'm so happy that you said it, because I think it's something that even, I struggle with. A lot of people that I know struggle with is they try to be everything to everyone. Do you have any tips for how you can kind of figure out who your target market is then?
Yeah, it starts for a lot of people with what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? If you're, say you're a writer or say you're a blogger and, you love beauty, you could talk about it in your sleep all day, all night. Maybe you need to focus on blogging about beauty products. But if you don't want to do, be the type of blogger or vlogger that does reviews or, talk about the latest beauty news, maybe you can do it from a business perspective, sort of like the Business of Fashion website, where they've become an industry authority talking about, what's happening in the industry. They talk about trends and things like that. And if you have a business and you love beauty, then you focus on, getting beauty clients and, working with beauty entrepreneurs and beauty businesses. So, you can, kind of narrow down what your focus should be or what your niche and specialty should be, start with your passions.
And do you think that if you're doing it, let's say I'm a blogger and I figured out that I have a passion for beauty products, as you said. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, do I need to do it for free, or should I automatically try to find paying clients?
I think obviously you should look for any opportunity that's going to be lucrative and that's going to pay, but it really depends on a number of factors. When I started freelancing under the House of Success banner as a way to gain experience in college, I did a lot of early projects for free or for pennies, because for me it was about the experience. Once you do a project and that project goes into your portfolio or it goes into your client history, when people look at the results of that, they're not thinking, oh, this person did it for free. They're only seeing the value of that end result. So it is valuable if there is an opportunity for you to gain experience. But, because the catch-22 is that in order to get clients, you need to have past experience. And in order to gain experience, you need to have clients. So doing it for free could mean an internship, a volunteer assignment, or a short-term project that you do in your field. But again, you have to make the decision on what works best for you in your situation. And if you are doing something for free, you need to weigh the pros and the cons and make sure you're not locked into a long-term deal that isn't fruitful or mutually beneficial to you. And one more thing I want to address in terms of doing it for free is that even in my business now, there are times when I will be flexible on the rate for different clients. If it's a small business, if it's a startup, if I really believe in what they're doing, then I'll adjust my rate. But again, one of the things that's super, super key is on invoices, I will still include what this would actually cost or should actually cost. And I'll show, to demonstrate the value of what you're getting. Because a lot of times when you agree to take less than what it's worth, people then begin to associate the value as that number, even though it should be higher or whatever the case may be. So again, a little bit of education goes a long way to say, yes, I've lowered my fee, but here is the value of what I'm doing.
And how do your clients react to that when they see it on their invoice?
It's a new practice, but they understand because, again, before they even see it, I've explained it. Like, hey, this is what this invoice is going to look like if I make, I've agreed to make this adjustment on your behalf. So, but on the invoice, it's going to show what it should cost plus whatever concession that I made in terms of what you'll actually be paying, and it'll be a breakdown of here's the value. And the same thing for any time I've done pro bono work, which was in the past. past, I would clearly outline, here's the value of this, here's the value of that. And then, at the bottom of the invoice, it'll say 0, but they'll clearly have documentation that shows here is what this costs. So should you want to move forward with House of Success or any other firm, you will have an idea of what this costs so that you're not walking away thinking you just got something for nothing.
And that also just makes people, not only value your business, but also respect you as an entrepreneur and as a businesswoman too. Like, that's what I would do. If I saw that she put that, I'm like, oh, wow, she's not someone who to be messed with. She's giving me a little break, but she's also showing me that, hey, this is what it would cost you. So that's also a big thing for respect. And I think as a woman too, and I don't want to force this on you, but I see it as, sometimes as women, we have to kind of even be more assertive with things because there might be people who want to walk over us too.
Totally. I see it all the time. One of the things that I talk about privately is that if I had, a white man doing business development for my business, who knows what part of the stratosphere we'd be in, because there's a lot of pushback. And I know it has a lot to do with, who's walking into that room or who's walking into that conversation and what those initial perceptions are. Now, because of, my expertise and my skill set, I know I can, ease a lot of those initial perceptions, but some of it still lingers and it comes out when I'm in the negotiating process, and I see it all the time. So that's a very accurate statement.
All right. So since we're talking about, pitching and closing deals and business development, do you have any pointers for how you can kind of close the deal with your business if you're working with hopefully a prospective client?
Yes, I think it's easier to close the deal when you're only pitching prospective clients or customers that you truly want to work with or for. Because when you're passionate about a potential opportunity, that will shine through, and you'll go much harder during the pitch phase to ensure and educate them on why you're the right candidate. Another thing that is important when pitching for new business is to listen. You may have an idea of what a prospective client needs, but allow them to tell you what they're looking for or what their immediate priorities are, and then modify your pitch accordingly. Sometimes, and I've done this in the past, but sometimes you'll have an urge to push for more because they need it, but you can lose sight of the deal at hand. And if you can close the deal and get your foot in the door, you'll be in a position to expand the scope of work later. So know when to stop pushing, know when to listen, and then modify your pitch accordingly. And sometimes the best way to close the deal is to walk away from it, especially if the other side is haggling, because if they're truly interested, they'll call you.
I like that. Know when to walk away. That's something that, a lot of newbie entrepreneurs, they might not know that because they might really, really just want to have a client, or they might just really, really need the money. So
right.
How did you walk away from a deal and still feel confident afterwards?
You have to know what your limits are. You have to know what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. You have to know what your ceiling or your basement is, and if you're in a negotiating phase and they kind of reach the basement and there's nowhere else to go, then stop. And I think a lot of times we get scared because we feel like, oh my God, is another opportunity coming? Is something else going to happen? Is this my only shot? But if you go back to what we talked about earlier, if you believe in what you're doing, if you believe that you're the best at this thing, you have to be willing to let it go. You have to be willing to stop. Even if it's the biggest opportunity that's ever crossed your desk, if you can get up from that table, if you can walk away, so many things can happen. So many things can open up. It may not happen right away. It may not happen the next day. They may, not come back to you, but you have to know where you stand. Like, what do you want from this? And if it's not happening, then that's when you have to say, okay, if we get here, if this is the number we hit, or if this is, what they're talking about, I'm not doing it.
And a big part of monetizing is knowing, what the numbers are going to be, knowing what your pricing is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
What's the right way to approach pricing for your business?
I don't know if there's necessarily a right way, especially because there's so many different types of businesses, there's so many different types of models, but it's important to know what the market rate for your services are and, what that rate would be if you were at an agency, what that rate would be if you were a salaried employee and as a freelancer, because those numbers will be different. And you can check the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have a great website that kind of gathers all this data and information to give you, so you'll be able to get, some salary averages in your field and a baseline knowledge of what the going rates are. And then you can also do a search for industry salary surveys, which are usually conducted in most fields every year, or just a simple Google search in your field. Because once you know the market rate for your work, you then have to factor in your own expertise and skill set. Like, what do you think, what do you think what you're doing is worth, plus any overhead or expenses that it takes to complete the project, time needed to complete the project, staff costs, etc., to come up with whatever that final fee will be. And I think the only wrong way would be if you know all these numbers and what the market rate is and you still lowball yourself.
Yes, that's what I wanted you to get to, because I know one of your previous podcasts, I don't remember what episode it was. Do you remember off the top of your head which one?
I want to say it was probably episode 10 on negotiations.
Yeah, really knowing your worth. Why is not lowballing so important?
Well, one, if you want to have a business that's sustainable, you can't get paid in gum. You can't get paid in Trident layers in order to build a business. And that's something that, I've run into. But also people, if you want to come in at a low rate, when you lowball yourself, people will pay you, but you won't be able to really get ahead because, again, people respect, like you talked about earlier, they respect when you respect yourself. They respect when you know your value, you know what something's worth, and you're not budging. And when you come in lower, you may get, a temporary assignment, a temporary project, but they're not going to trust you with that big piece of business, or they're not going to trust you in a way and move to the side so that you can do the best job possible. So it's like, is this really beneficial to you? And also, if you accept, if you lowball yourself, then you'll have to play the quantity over quality game in terms of, how many clients do you have? How many customers do you have? And whereas you could have a great business with, 3 to 5 clients at any one time. Now, in order to replace that income, you need 10, 15, 50 clients, all paying you one piece of gum to replace, business where if you just charge what it's worth, so you just shouldn't do it. And we're scared. Again, it comes back to fear because we're afraid of somebody telling us no. When if you remove that fear, because I did a podcast on, the rejection committee. It's other people's job to tell you no. If they want to tell you no, they're going to tell you. There's nothing you can do to stop them. If they want to walk away or tell you no, allow it. Because they're not the right partner, they're not the right client, they're not the right customer. Move on.
So let's say you're in your business, you've been growing your clientele, you've been monetizing, but you just have a client who is not the best to work with. How do you go about firing a client, or how do you know when it's time to walk away?
You know when it's time. You always know when it's time. And although I've never fired a client, I should have. And even though I didn't fire that client, I knew that once we got to that end of that contract, I wasn't going to seek a renewal, and they probably weren't going to renew. That's happened a few times. And again, you have that gut feeling, you have that intuitive feeling that the work relationship is souring, or that this person or group is not allowing you to do what they've hired you to do. And then but again, here comes that fear. Here comes that moment where it's like, well, I need this money, or I need this business, or maybe things will get better, but they won't. So I've made a kind of, pact with myself that going forward, whenever that feeling comes up, my intuition has never been wrong, ever. So whenever that feeling comes up, I need to decide and conquer. and make a move immediately so that I can move on to, more fruitful opportunities.
And it seems like, that's been going well for you. So
Listen, I'm working on it. Work in progress.
So let's kind of transition and and talk about tools.
Okay.
Things that every entrepreneur kind of needs when they are growing and building their business. Is there any specific resource or tools that you think are essential for any aspiring or established entrepreneur in the creative entrepreneurial space?
I think it's important, that you have a website. If it's not a blog, just a homepage, something where you can kind of put the who, what, when, where, why, how. I also think it's important that whatever your domain is, you have an official email address that's connected to that domain. A lot of domain providers and website providers will, they have email programs, but I personally enjoy Google Apps for Work since it's based obviously on the Gmail platform. That's, the most popular email platform outside of Outlook, which is an enterprise platform. So Google Apps for Work, Dropbox for large files, Boomerang, which is a Gmail plugin that I love, but it enables you to get read receipts and it allows you to schedule messages. So that's a big deal. So Boomerang, definitely, add that. They have a free version as well as a premium version. So you can look into both. You can start, using it now and then see if it's something that you want to hold on to. And then I know you talk a lot to different bloggers and influencers. So I would say a PO box. And this is just because it's a safeguard against having to share your personal information. And it comes in handy if you're running a biz that's a side hustle or if you don't have a standalone office space. And I know that a lot of people are now getting packages from different companies, or if they're, starting a newsletter, you have to put an address on it. Having a PO box helps you keep your personal and private information private, but it also has that convenience of still, giving you a standalone address that you can use. Another thing that I think is important for entrepreneurs to have is a new business onboarding process. For instance, once you get past the proposal and negotiation phase and they accept your terms, do you have a contract template that's been pre-approved by a lawyer? And don't get scared. You're like, a lawyer? What?
What's that?
You can hire a lawyer to consult on this, or you can go to the local college's law program and have, they usually have like a law firm run by students in a lot of law programs. So you can have them look over it and the rate is much less, or they may do it for free with, obviously the expertise of the law professor or whoever is in a department. So that's a good, inexpensive alternative. And, do you have an invoice template or system? I cannot tell you how many times, just from the brand side, working with influencers or whoever, and we're trying to pay them, and they're like, how am I supposed to send this invoice? What is that? Like, and I'm just like, what, girl? Or guy, get it together. So it's like these simple things you need to have. And what does that first month of business look like? I call it a discovery month because that's the time when you need to essentially embed yourself in your client's business to learn as much as you can and to get any materials or data you need to complete the project. But I think overall, start building some systems in place, because as you grow and bring other people into your team, all you have to do is teach them the system and you don't have to spend as much time.
You dream drivers, do you guys hear that? Listen, Sakita has just dropped so much knowledge right here, but I think what you said about systems and processes is just so important, because I even see that, as you know, I still have a 9-to-5, and it's something that I even see in an established business. When you don't have those systems, it just doesn't make your business scalable. And if you want to grow and if you want to monetize, hopefully you're thinking about how you can scale this and how you can make it something bigger eventually. So get all those tips that Sakita just dropped, and I'll have those in the show notes for you guys to listen, for you guys to read also. So let's talk about you, Sakita. I know I've been following you for the past 3 years, or probably more than that, and I've just seen so much and how you've grown over the years, with whether it's the features you've been on or your client base. But what would you say, why do you think your personal brand is so important when it comes to building your business?
Um, because for me and for my firm, again, when you have a service-based business, it's coming from your expertise and skill set. So if you're going to be, even though the firm is not called, Sakita, Holley and Company or, Sakita, Holley Communications, I'm the face of the business. I'm the kind of brain that even when I work with other people or have a team that people are hiring into. That's what they're buying into. That's what they're investing in. So if you're going to be the face of the business, then your personal brand becomes a bigger deal. Whereas if you're building a business that you're playing the background, then you have the luxury of not having to be as public because, I'm on social media, I'm tweeting all the time, I'm doing these things, but really I would rather not. I don't want to do it a lot of times, but I understand the value and importance. And even with other platforms that I'm not, as big on, whereas Instagram, Snapchat, Periscope, I am on those a little bit, but I'm going to be, investing more time because, again, I know that these things are important. And that's what people want to see. If I'm going into, different establishments, and luckily I have results for clients that I've worked with, so I don't have to kind of point to my own accounts, but I've had success in that area. And people want to know, okay, well, if you are an expert in this, well, why does yours look like that? or why is this like that? So personal branding is important for credibility. What do you want people to buy into? What do you want them to think about your business and how you run your business or do your business? And again, I've said this before, business is personal. No, I don't care what level of business, government, whatever, as we've seen with the Obama administration, people work with people that they like. So if people, get a glimpse of my personality in terms of what I do on, just when I'm just talking or just being silly, then they're more inclined to call and say, okay, you know what? You all right. What you got going on? And then we can explore a business relationship. So I think that's why personal branding becomes, so important to the process.
And along those lines, which one of your social media platforms do you think has been the most influential for you in the actual growing your business aspect?
I would say Twitter, hands down. Twitter and the blog, because the blog, again, when I started my business, it was the way for me to gain credibility without people knowing my age or even caring. Because, when you talk about something and I talk from a place of authority, or here's what I truly believe about the situation, here's how this person or this business should navigate it, they can't take anything away from that. The only thing once they read it is, okay, we agree or we don't agree. And I think Twitter allows me, again, to kind of talk about these things and then quickly move on to another topic. But over time, like you said, you've been following me for years, you can probably attest to I keep it short and then I get out the way. I'm in there and then I'm out. So, but you for the most part what you're going to get if you follow me.
And I would never know from, following you on social media that it's not something that you don't like. That I would never know that it's something that's not. Yeah, like I just think like she loves social media, and when she's on it, she's the bomb. And so it's so good to see that you can do things that you don't like and still be good at it. And it's like a necessary evil, especially if you are trying to build your business.
Exactly. You can definitely do it. I mean, if I could and I think I did this in December where I just didn't tweet for probably most of that month. I tweeted in the beginning, but not much. Like that was beautiful for me. Like I had it up, I could see what was happening. If something happened in real time, I could jump in, but I just enjoyed not saying anything. In my real life, there are times like the thing that brings me joy is sometimes I just want to be silent. And that's how I feel with social media too. It's a lot of noise, and I tweet this often, but guard your energy. So sometimes that means pulling back when you need to, recharge.
And that's a good segue into our question. When's the time that you felt like giving up, and how did you bounce back?
That feeling creeps in A lot of different times.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the last time I felt really strongly about giving up was probably the second half of 2015. And I actually did an entire podcast episode on this. I think it's episode 9 or something of the Hashtags and Stilettos podcast. But even though I felt like giving up, I still felt very strongly that I had some things that I wanted to accomplish in this space and with my business before I move on to another thing. And so to get through that moment, that rut, I had to really pinpoint the thing that was bothering me or causing me the most frustration, because I really do love the work that I do. I'm happiest when I'm able to do impactful work. I love shifting consumer behavior. I love, influencing consumer attitudes. I love, building brands. So there had to be something else that was making me want to move on from that. And once I was able to kind of pinpoint and isolate what that was, then I could figure out how to get through it or how to navigate around it and focus on the parts of the work that brought me the most joy. So I think that's key. When you want to give up, is the thing really the thing? Is it the work or is it something else? So really figure out what that is. And then if you feel like, I still want to get out of here, I still want to give up, then, move forward in that way. But if you can isolate what the thing is and figure out a way to deal with that thing less, then, I think that's the best way to navigate.
So what's next for Sakita Holley?
I want to continue for right now before I give up.
Don't give up, Sakita. We're rooting for you.
Thank you. I want to continue to grow House of Success PR. I want to continue to grow our beauty roster. I want to, get into the travel space. I have something really, really special that I think I can do for tourism companies and countries and territories and, that whole industry. I want to travel more personally. And I'm just really excited about, the possibilities of where I can take the Hashtags and Stilettos podcast. So I'm excited about that in that space. And I think that's kind of my focus for now. And also just in my personal life, just doing more things that bring me joy.
I like that. Doing more things that bring you joy. Because at the end of the day, even though you're putting your dreams in drive, you still got to make sure there's a person to drive the car, right?
Listen. Absolutely.
So let's get into our Dreams and Drive lightning round. So Sakita, as you know, we do this lightning round with all of our guests, and it's just a fun, quick way to wind down and think about our conversation today. So tell me the first thing, the first word, first phrase that comes to mind when you hear the following words, okay?
Okay.
Park.
I think about Central Park because I've actually been thinking about it a lot. And when it warms up, I want to take a bike ride through the park. I think I want to take a bike ride down the West Side Highway next to the Hudson River because I love driving along that street when the weather is nice and there's no traffic. So I imagine that a bike ride would be love.
Reverse.
A pivot of some sort, like maybe you changed your mind.
Neutral.
At a standstill.
Drive.
Ambitious.
All right. Thank you for that, Sakita. I know we talked about a lot of stuff during this podcast.
Yes.
But, so I've been working on this thing called the keys to success. I know DJ Khaled has been saying it a lot, but whatever. I could say it too.
Listen, you never have enough keys. There's a lot of doors out there.
I know. So what are 3 essential things that you think all aspiring entrepreneurs or dream drivers need in their toolkit?
Know what your why is. Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Are you sure you want what you say you want? So that would be one. The second thing would be to have a mentor or an informal board of advisors in different industries who you can bounce ideas off of or call for advice. Entrepreneurship is a lonely field, and most of the people closest to you, your family, your friends, they may not even understand what you do or what you're trying to do, so they won't be able to assist or relate in the way that you want them to. So having that mentor or board of advisors that you can can tap into will be extremely helpful. And the last thing I think is to figure out a way to have a life outside of your work. I know balance is like this buzzword, but it's subjective, and I know it means different things to different people. And I mentioned this already, but I truly believe that it's essential to do more things that bring you joy. And again, I'm going to say that a lot here and in other places because it's an epiphany I just had about my own life. Because it's okay to live. It can be as simple as treating yourself to a dinner out, scheduling a DVR and chill date with yourself or your significant other, or just taking a midday nap or walk through the park. What brings you joy? Do more of that. And because, my best ideas or epiphanies, really, when I think about it, they've come to me when I'm not working.
Thank you so much, Sakita, for being on today's episode of No Parking. And I'm so excited for our dream drivers to be able to learn from you on how they can build their clientele and start monetizing their service-based business.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait till it's out too. I kind of want you to host my podcast now.
All right.
This was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to episode 6. And as always, you can get today's show notes at dreamsanddrive.com. You can also listen to previous episodes and check out more about our Dreams and Drive No Parking community. And if you're listening on iTunes and SoundCloud, please, please, please leave a review, subscribe, comment, share with a friend. Let's help others learn the tools that they need to take their dreams out of park and into drive. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for episode 7.